shine, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, this little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I had to write these down because I can't remember them, so just give me a sec.
Do you have the answers written down too?
That's your job. Okay, so to start things off, where have you been a pastor?
I started out in Heppner, Oregon, in eastern Oregon in 1977. I had two congregations, one in Heppner and one out in the wheat fields about 24 miles west of Heppner.
Okay.
And then I went to Prineville, and then I went to Salem, and then I retired, and then I went to Pendleton, and then I retired, and then I came to Silverton.
Sounds like you've been like everywhere. So, and then just a kind of easy question is, what is the best thing you have ever eaten?
Oh, there is this little seafood market in Biloxi, Mississippi, down in what they call the Point, where the poor folk live. And they have a little kitchen there, and they make a crawfish etouffee, which is absolutely to die for. If you ever have a chance to go build houses in Biloxi, because we did that after the hurricane, the best reason to go is to have seafood, crawfish etouffee at this seafood market, the name of which I can never remember. Best food I've ever had.
Well, I don't think I can try that because I'm allergic to shellfish, so I'd probably actually die, so that's an issue. And then what is something unique about you? And it can be anything.
I guess I really don't have a good answer for that. That's something that I think somebody else would have to answer. I guess, what? Yeah, this has not died. It really isn't. I guess the other thing is that I have a unique voice.
And then, where have you seen the face of God?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot. And the one that comes to me, I was telling somebody about this yesterday. I was a pastor in Salem at Christ Lutheran Church, and somebody called me up one day and said, my brother is dying, could you come over and spend some time with us? And the guy's house was only about 3 blocks away from the church. And so I said, sure. They were members of our church in Willamina, west of here. So I went over and I met Harry, and Harry was in his very last stages of life, and he was sitting on the couch like this. Semi-comatose, had not been talking at all, and there were 5 children. They were all like in their 70s and 80s, and they're all sitting around the table, and they're drinking coffee, and they're talking about Harry, and so I went over, and I always assume that hearing is the last sense to die, and so I always speak to people that are comatose. I always have prayer with them, and I always have scripture. And I did that, and we prayed, and I said thank you to the family. They said thank you, and I went to a meeting at church. And I got done with the meeting, and I just had this premonition that I needed to stop there. They were not my parishioners. I didn't have to. But I stopped at the house, and there was Harry sitting on the couch, kind of like this. And they're still at the table drinking coffee, and they had the hymnals out, and they're picking hymns for his funeral. Harry's still on the couch. And so I went over and I sat next to Harry, and we were sitting there, and I just sat there for a while, and they're talking back there, and I finally said, Harry, they're talking about you. And Harry has not spoken for like 2 days. Harry says, yeah, they don't think I can hear what they're saying. And while I was there, Harry died. And that's how I got into the Salem Statesman Journal, because Hank Aaron's picked up a piece I wrote in the newsletter about this incredible family who was all gathered around Harry as he died. And what I wrote in the newsletter was, there was this family picking out hymns and scriptures to celebrate Harry's life. And there was Harry sitting on the couch, dead as a doornail. And I don't know, I guess some people thought that was very shocking to say, but it was just this whole concept of this man who died with his family surrounding him. They were singing hymns, and they were reading scripture, and they were figuring out how they were going to usher him in to the arms of Jesus. And man, I'll tell you what, that's the face of God.
And then last question is, what question would you like me to ask you?
Why am I a pastor?
Why are you a pastor?
I don't know.
Thank you.
That's not so far from the truth, though. I don't know. I was a very aimless student. I almost didn't make it out of high school. I did pretty well just on charm and BS most of my way through school. Well, that's the truth. And I got to my senior year and I couldn't fake it anymore, and I just barely got out of high school, and I was going to flunk out of college, so I joined the Air Force. I had no idea at all where I was going in life. I was smart enough to know that I needed time to figure that out. And while I was in the Air Force, I don't know how else to say this. God stopped me dead in the middle of a road. I was walking down the road. I was holding hands with a really good-looking girl. And I was not thinking about going into the ministry. And God said to me, are you going to do what I want you to do or not? And I'll tell you what, that gets your attention. And it was kind of like, okay. And here's God's sense of humor. Because I think God has this really strange sense of humor. Remember I told you I was a lousy student? I didn't know how to study. I stopped doing homework in the 3rd grade. So God said, I want you to be a pastor, and I want you to go to 8 years of college. And here's the thing. When God gives you something to do, God gives you the ability to do it. And so this lousy student, with the help of Concordia College, was college then in Portland, and the intervening years actually made the dean's list before I got out of undergraduate work. So, how did I become a pastor? Because God said, are you going to do what I want you to do or not? I think that when God has a purpose for us, sooner or later God makes it clear enough that we have to make a choice.
Thank you.